Hello and welcome. This is Pregnant Stallion Radio. More specifically, the Crusaders ask, advice, talk, cookies, banter, everything, Colin, basically. It's 8 minutes past 4, the 8th episode. Well, 8 minutes past 4 a.m. on the 1st of April on Central European Time. Very important information. And today we've got lots of people. We have myself, Shade, the glorious Emmonisis, and anchor pony extraordinaire, Sarf the Magnifico.
Extraordinary. No, not really. But I'll deal with just Sarf the Magnifico.
And since we have a very controversial topic that's more controversial than world peace, the Middle East, and all that sort of stuff, we have all the people we could get. We have Bleeding Raindrops as well.
Hello.
And we have Shuckle.
Hey!
So, Sarf, what is this extraordinarily controversial subject?
Well, for starters, we're going to tackle the double Rainboom episode, fan-made episode, quotation marks, and tackle in every sense of the word. Gonna chase it down and beat it to death. No, just kidding. I've seen a lot of really negative reviews in the last couple days, and people just ranting about how terrible it was and stuff like that. I have a few opinions I feel like expressing on the matter, and I know the rest of us do, as well. I think rather than go about saying that it was the worst thing we've ever seen without much to back us up on that is pretty futile and redundant. So we're just going to kind of take a look at it and what was wrong with it, what was bad about it. First of all, I want to start off saying I'm not going to sit here
and what was good with it.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to start off by saying
I have a different opinion.
I didn't hate it. I'm not going to sit here and I'm going to say it was absolutely junk.
Chicken.
Chicken. But it had its good parts, but there was also a huge thing about it that I didn't like, that was potentially a little more harmful, I want to say. As fan content, it was good. It didn't fail in any regard to that. However, they didn't really do what they said they would do, and that would be industry equality, and I think that the fandom could have done a lot better. So that's basically your super brief opinion? Brief at this
right?
point, and then we can divulge into things later, yeah.
So how about we take turns? How about Emmonisis? Go next. Do it. What is your super brief opinion about this thing?
My opinion was that it was just awesome. I really liked it. The animation was good quality. And I know a lot of people, kind of harked on the story. And I didn't really watch it that much for the story. It was a good, simple enough story. It wasn't really the emphasis as far as I was concerned. But for what it was worth, it was really well animated. It flowed pretty well for me. It did drag a little bit here and there, but I forgave that. And I just had a lot of fun. Like, I was genuinely invested in it and made me laugh, and it kept me on the edge of my seat. And, I tend to be a little more feely than analytical with this kind of stuff. So if I feel that something is awesome, I usually just say it's awesome. And this did exactly that, and that's why I stick to my opinion so much.
So it was so awesome!
Exactly.
Okay, who's next? Who wants to go next?
Step up to the plate.
Oh, I will. All right, so I felt that the animation was great. I felt that the music was great, which is weird because I usually say all fan music is terrible. The rest of it felt like a fan fiction. It honestly felt like one big fan fiction. I don't think it was as bad as what everyone else was saying it is, but it just felt, how would I put it? It didn't feel like an actual episode. It felt like an animated fan fiction, and that, I think, was my biggest complaint with it. And those are my brief thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess that just leaves me. I ended up writing almost like 1,000 words or whatever review on this, so I'm just going to not say all that. And my really, really super short version is I really think the entire thing was rushed. I think they wanted to get it out by a certain time and cut corners or whatever to try and get it out on time, and really didn't produce the quality that they should have, because there was a lot of details that I felt just could have been done way better that just stuck out to me. So that's really my super short opinion.
Well, and then I sort of cornered myself to go last. Okay. I think if you judge it as a fan episode, there's nothing really bad about it, really. It's a fan episode, not an episode. So, yeah. Unfortunately, for me, there are three things I don't like, and that is, like, inside internet meme jokes, fan fiction, and the worst of all, crossover. So,
that was
basically,
my favorite part.
I was sort of with it, sort of start dragged and all that, but then, yeah, kind of lost me there. But is it bad? Can I complain about it? No, absolutely not. It's not bad. It's pretty good.
I think,
but I didn't like it.
When you look at the whole episode, I think it's pretty clear that it was meant to be just a crossover, and the whole idea, everything else was kind of secondary to that. It was meant to be a crossover, and that's what the bulk of the episode was, this crossover. And then they kind of had this rushed ending where all of a sudden, oh, bam!
Chicken.
Pinky out of nowhere. Chicken.
That was the worst part, I think. When, we're having it just Pinky out of absolutely nowhere, like the Durex and shit of that thing, and it's just like, oh, well, that was... I sat there for like a minute thinking, what just happened? Like, we were going on this other adventure, and then, oh, hey, Pinky here to save the day, okay, and then all of a sudden everything's fine, and it's just like, wow.
Everything was not fine.
I don't think that her coming in out of nowhere should always be the solution to everything. Oh, bam, she's so random. Like that. Like,
Pinkie Pie saves the day.
It should be the easy way out, which too often it is.
Well, in fairness, they sort of set the tone for a Deus Ex Machina finish there, because the established content basically was, hey, we're just gonna randomly jump into this other dimension. Well, what do you expect from that point on?
Yeah, and to me, the episode was not very serious. I mean, it was just all good fun, so that kind of stuff is more forgivable. Plus, it was kind of a throwback joke to earlier when Twilight was discussing, what would happen if each, the main six were to drink this potion, and it continued on from there. I kind of like that because it was like a little Chekhov's gun type thing.
It's not super serious.
Yeah, it's not super serious, and I didn't expect it to be.
If you're going to
Twilight even said that she didn't know what it would do, and then proceeds immediately to explain exactly what it would do.
What I'm wondering is, how did she create a potion that fast? She had been working on this potion since her magic kindergarten, and then all of a sudden she could just create it in like an hour? I mean, how did that happen?
She's got all the notes and stuff.
What actually bothered me from the beginning was why exactly they were teaching students in magic kindergarten a performance-enhancing drugs that was capable of that kind of power. That could, and it showed Twilight using it. The kind of power that could overthrow the princesses, and they were teaching this in kindergarten. If that's kindergarten level magic.
I don't think they were teaching her that. I think it was her experimenting, because Twilight's a bit of a nerd.
Yeah.
I think she was just experimenting.
She was just making it herself.
Yeah.
I think if you're gonna go there, you're already overthinking it, because there are many plausible solutions there. It's not really a plot hole so much. That is a very loose episode. So, but if you're going to super analyze every part, then it won't make sense.
No, there's no fun in not super analyzing it.
Exactly.
I like super analyzing things. I just gotta remember, did I like it or did I not? I liked it, so there we go.
Well, I'm saying if you're super analyzing it, keep in mind, randomly, Johnny Bravo jumps in, it's, all bets are off.
I
just cracked up.
And then Pinkie Pie out of nowhere, wait, we weren't supposed to take things? So what do I do with this? And Blue Regard
and then Blue.
The one thing that kind of bothered me about that was the fact that they went out of their way to get permission from Hasbro. And this was stated before, and I've seen a lot of people say this.
Yeah.
They went out of their way to get permission from Hasbro. but half the episode was Cartoon Network, and they didn't get permission from Cartoon Network because they had to cut away from the scene rather than have it like at the beginning of one of their commercial openings. So right in the middle of the scene, they cut away to show this big disclaimer. So, and the entire point behind going to Hasbro so is they wouldn't get a cease and desist, which is very likely that they could get it from the Cartoon Network. They've only sort of half protected
Cartoon Network
themselves.
isn't as temperamental as Hasbro is, though.
You just have to think what Hasbro has to deal with when it comes to our fandom. And now, my biggest complaint about it, I liked it as a fan-made content. However, I think with the type of publicity it's been getting, with permission from Hasbro and stuff like that, there's a big chance that Hasbro, and maybe even Lauren Faust, because she's not on the MLP project anymore. I know she said in the past that she doesn't look at fan-made content, so it doesn't hinder her or whatever, but she's not on the project anymore. So it's possible that she could be watching that. It's possible that other big people could be watching that. It's possible that other non-bronies could be watching that. And I think with such a big spotlight on that episode, it didn't give a good light on the potential of what as a fandom we can do. And
exactly.
I made this in a thread on PonyChan, and basically what my opinion was for as amount as the amount of focus.
Why didn't you just go to?
It's putting a lot of negative light onto. I don't want to say negative, but people are going to see this, and they're going to see this as the best that our fandom can do, and it's fan-made content. It's fine, but in actuality, we can put together industry quality content. We can put together perfect content, and that's very much stuff we've done in the past that hasn't quite gotten nearly as much publicity. So I think that some of the bigger people are going to see this, and they're going to see this as the best that we can do.
It was a damn fine project, man. I don't think that's a bad representation of our fandom at all. I think someone looks at that and sees that it's a fan-made content.
I think
they'd be highly impressed.
Honestly,
you could always do better.
As a fan-made content, it stood up really well as a fan video.
Exactly.
But as a full episode, it fell short tremendously as a full episode.
And if
it wants to call itself an episode, I don't think it has the right to do that.
Honestly, I think it should have been longer. I honestly wanted to see...
Yeah!
I didn't mind the crossover. Think about this. For any crossover you could have ever done that's appropriate for an MLP thing, what is more appropriate than another show that was a girl show that had a following by a male fan base? If it did anything that could have ever been a crossover, that was the most appropriate crossover they could have done. And they did it well.
Ish.
Yeah, they did it. No, I think they did it well. And just the fact that it was there didn't make it feel like an actual... It made it feel like a fan content instead of making it feel like an actual episode. Which the goal was to create an actual episode, not to create like something that's purely fan-made content, even though it was fan-made content.
Well, to sort of counter your point, Sarf, it's not really... you're projecting basically what you see it as based on the recognition it gets and the attention it gets, but the quote-unquote big people, whatever they may be, they see it as exactly what it is, and they base their opinions on that. I don't think it will get much more than that. I mean, it's a fan episode. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like a real episode. It doesn't feel like a real episode. It's not a real episode. It's a fan episode. And why do you think it's competing with other things that people can produce that just happen to share the same fandom? I mean, that seems a little bit weird to me.
I think I really think I think we're delving into our opinions here. So I was gonna open the writing part of it.
Oh yeah,
but I really
definitely.
Are we really
the writing
from
could
our
have done,
opinions?
that could have been brought to better a lot better. And honestly, I think what do you want, Shuckle?
What do you
They
want?
should have hired writers. They should have hired writers.
They should have.
Animators are not writers. I know you want to tell your own story, but if you want to create like an actual episode, you hired someone to do the music. You hired someone to do the animation.
They should have. At the very least, I think they should have run it through. Well, and this is just I'm a little biased in this respect, but I think they should have run it through FIC. I came from FIC, and really any of the serious reviewers on FIC could have fixed at least half, if not all, of the problems I found in the writing, and they probably could have done.
Even if I fiction somewhere, it just felt like there was, and what made it feel like a fan fiction to me, there was no real pre-readers. It's just like, we're going to tell our own story. I think they maybe got someone to spell check it, but there was no professional. I think you could have hired like some you could have easily hired some of the best fanfic writers in the entire fandom to do this.
And they would have jumped on it too. And I think
they would have jumped on it.
It's more than just the writers that they could have done, because if you look at the voice acting, most of it wasn't bad. Twilight's character, that was believable. I like that one.
It was bad.
I think Rainbow Dash was a bit out of character.
A little bit off, yeah. She didn't quite have the voice, but she gave it her best shot.
My complaint wasn't just the voice act, is the fact that the actual voice sounded like it was recorded on the stock mic on a laptop or something like that. It was very hollow and echoey the entire time, and it didn't have the quality that Twilight's voice did. And I think in that respect, they could have hired someone that had actual audio equipment. If you go around on YouTube, there's people that do voice acting for Vinyl Scratch, and there's people that do voice acting for Derby and stuff like that are very talented voice actresses and actors that could have done either and have actual sound equipment, because they're legitimate voice actresses that would have jumped on this project to get their name out there. And I think there's a lot more that they could have done than just kind of lived with what they had.
Oh yeah.
I don't think the quality of it was so much bad, but I think in a lot of respects, the director wanted to kind of skip around certain corners and wanted to get everybody together as fast as he could. He didn't look around, and I don't really remember. I wasn't really very active a year ago, but there wasn't really a lot of advertising out there that said, "Oh, we're looking for all these people that we need help with all this stuff." They weren't advertising. As far as I'm concerned, I
don't think they took themselves as seriously as they should have. I think they sort of saw themselves as like a cool fan-made project, but I don't think they saw themselves as we could create an actual professional level episode. I don't think they saw them as that. I think they said, "Oh, we can do that," but I don't think they did everything they could to do that, because I didn't think they.
I really wish they hadn't broadcast it as an episode.
I think that they really did try their best on it, and it really does show. I mean, there's very few projects out there that have the same, level of attentiveness as this. But, I'm just saying, for what they have out there, it was still really, really good.
Oh,
I mean, everything can always be better. I'm not saying it can't. And I can definitely see, some voice animation, vocals, issues and whatnot. And the writing wasn't the most solid piece, but it was this, it wasn't like too broken, at least not as far as I could see.
The people that were involved did a really good job. I just think the director could have reached out a little more, and if there was one thing that the only thing I had a problem with the actual show itself was the chicken advertising and the references. It was out of hand. It was. The occasional one every now and then would have been fine, but they had billboards in the city, in the Cartoon Network city. They had billboards with it was the chicken thing. They advertised Equestria Daily. They advertised Equestria Daily twice. They advertised We Love Fine. They advertised like a whole crap load of stuff. They had like thousands of references.
Oh yeah, they did. But I like the references and stuff like that. Like finding
maybe that's something that appeals
the different
to you.
Advertising and whatnot. The different little references here and there, like Aang. I saw Aang and Princess Buttercup and Mabel and Dipper, and there's also BMO and all sorts of things on there. I could go on, and it's so fun.
Granted, for some people that's fine. I think too much of it was right there in your face. It was too distracting from the actual viewership. Like there was the scene where Rainbow Dash was trying to get away from the Powerpuff Girls. She was flying down the street, she goes around a corner, and then bam, We Love Fine, and then bam, Equestria Daily to like twice. It just, it took away from it. It did.
It was half a second. I really don't think that would take away from it. It's not like they're beating you in the face with it.
There was this half a second over and over again, and I noticed it. In that half a second, I noticed it. And at the beginning, they actually had a companion cube sitting in the rubble when Dash flew off.
Yeah, that was cool. I like that.
It was a little.
There was also the TARDIS too.
That's why I wanted to watch it a second time.
And it's always fun just to kind of pause, see what's in there, pause, see what's in there. I like that.
Some of the complaints I've seen are things like some of the scenes dragged on too long, like the scene with Derby. That lasted way too long. It was like...
a little bit shorter it would have been fine, I think, yeah.
Well, if we're talking about length of scenes, the first scene itself in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic scene going on for 10 minutes in one scene, that's about 10 times too long.
But I don't.
The only thing that felt dragged to me was that opening kind of back and forth between Rainbow Dash and Twilight.
That's what I was talking about.
That was the only thing that kind of bothered me as far as dragging. Everything else felt nicely paced.
The beginning scene was a testing scene, and I remember quite a few months ago it was on Question.
It was on a BronyCon. They showed that scene
too,
at BronyCon.
Yeah. That scene was the tester scene. That was the advertising scene to show what they could do, and that's why that scene was the best of the entire show. Everything else after that was almost a little bit less on par.
I have to put something out here that this is just for me that really annoyed me. The fact that, especially in that scene, Rainbow Dash would scratch her chicken and an electric guitar would play. It was just like she did any sort of movement all of a sudden. It's just like,
I didn't hear that at all.
And what irritated me with that, you can't hear the hoof steps. It's completely silent except for dialogue and music. It almost felt like a silent film with the odd line thrown in, which irritated the cheeses out of me.
And I didn't quite notice that either.
I think just in a lot of respects they were trying really hard to put forth their best in the first scene, and that one really shows, and just after that it wasn't quite the same, because that first scene was kind of to prove to everyone that we could do exactly what we're saying we were doing, and that first scene, admittedly, like, that was just about up to industry standards. The only problem I had was the mouths didn't always sync up throughout the whole episode, and I think probably what they did is they did that animation first and maybe the voice acting was second.
Well, I think you do have to keep in mind that when you're critiquing this, you have to critique it basically for what it is trying to be. So if you're gonna be critiquing
it was trying to be a real episode.
It's trying to be a fan episode, and they want to do what they want to put in a fan episode. So if you don't like all the majillion references, or you don't like the particular angle of the music, well, that's what they wanted to do. I know, but I'm watching
don't advertise it as a full episode. Advertise it as your fan-made content, and then you can do whatever the bloody hell you like.
They advertised it that it would be.
That to me is just nitpicking. It really is.
Their words exactly was, we're going to put out something that's exactly like up to industry standards. We're going to put out a full episode that's for fans, and it was going to be the expectation that they laid down was that
I'm raging on false advertisement.
Perfect.
Well,
so in that sense, they failed, and I see where Aimonisis is coming from. As a fan-made content, it was good. I didn't hate it. I would give it overall a 6 out of 10. Generously, and if they didn't have those advertisements, but that's just my personal opinion. If they didn't have all the references, I easily would have given it higher. But it was just there was little nitpicky things that I didn't like, and the only thing that really took it away from me was just the references. Now, if I was the type of person that liked that, then it easily would have been an amazing episode for me, and that's why I completely understand where Aimonisis is coming from. And I just think overall, if there was one thing that they had to change, it would just be how much the director did. Because he didn't get enough people as he should have.
Oh, you shouldn't expect super perfect industry standard carbon copy of a MLP episode. No matter what they advertise or claim. See, I missed that part because I just see fan episode. So I think I'm watching a fan episode, and it looks like a fan episode.
Yeah.
Done.
I can understand why people would be upset because they did advertise it as like a, industry quality episode. I do understand that. However, advertisement is not the finished product, and I don't give two shits. It's about advertisement, period. So I just watched it for the sake of watching it.
If you watch it for the entertainment value,
I wasn't going in there expecting anything great or anything terrible. I expected to see something. That's about it, and I got something that I really liked.
It wasn't terrible, exactly, and let's face it, in terms of content and writing, it's still better than some of the shows that the canon has come out with, like, let's not even talk about Spike at Your Service. That was...
I still liked it.
You like everything.
You like it.
Well, yeah, because I try to find the best in all things.
I was kidding. It's okay.
They had a lot of pandering. I think they tried to fit in too many characters, but they didn't do it to the point that it was really, really hard on the eyes. They brought in each of the characters maybe once.
I think we're talking a lot about we're talking about a lot about the production and a lot of what it could have been. I think we should take some time to talk about, as an episode, what was wrong and what was good with it. Like as in the actual stuff itself. Like what was wrong? Like what was wrong with the actual plot? Not with. Well, I don't think they did it up to actual standards. I think let's talk about.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay,
analyzing it from
analyzing the story and all that stuff.
Okay, well, Raindrops, why don't you give your first opinion then, since you're the fanfic writer?
Oh, okay. Apparently, yeah, I'm the authority on this. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, you're the authority on stories.
Apparently, okay. Well, to start off, the conversation between Rainbow Dash and Twilight in the beginning just seemed almost a little out of character. These are two primarily talkative characters. Twilight has a thing to say about everything, and she's got a wall of text almost for it because she's such a nerd. And then Rainbow Dash goes off about how cool or awesome or uncool or unawesome something is, and it was almost like it was like two lines. And in the first episode, it was like Twilight silently shaking around something, not making any noise whatsoever, and then Rainbow Dash is just like, sup, and then I got it. It was like, it was static and it was non-fluid at all. And so I didn't like it for that purpose, but I'm sorry, I'm getting too fine detail there, but the plot line, as it went along, it felt so almost forced. It was like, okay, Rainbow Dash, yeah, I suppose she would, once she realizes, oh, it'll increase my talents, I could be a super fast flyer. Okay, I can see her doing that, and then she happens to break in through to another dimension, she's running around. That was all fine. But the way Twilight acted, honestly, you're putting me on the spot here, and I really can't analyze this on the spot. I wish I could have written something down in advance, but I don't know. I'm just going to try and think and collect my thoughts while someone else talks for now.
The point of what we do here, Raindrops, is not to have a script, but to put each other on the spot in simple conversation. And
okay.
That is the foundation of Pregnant Stallion Radio.
Okay.
This public service announcement brought to you by Sarf the Magnifico. Well, actually, that's what I was talking about. The first scene sort of sets the tone if you want to gonna analyze the writing of and the plot of the episode. I think it sort of sets the tone, but all the same, the pacing is very inconsistent.
Oh yeah. And,
that was another point I was going to bring up.
The first scene drags on, and the second scene, and there are these spaces of, oh, hold on, we're going to interrupt this supposedly very exciting part with a few in-jokes. Hold on. Okay, they're done now. We're going to continue. And it doesn't really give you a smooth watching experience. It sort of makes you sort of peer into the corner to see how far in you are and think about what you're going to say about this later, rather than keep you into the episode. And the way that the second and the third act are resolve very quickly in succession, and the first act is too long, and that sort of makes for a quirky watching experience. What I liked about the episode, though, even though for all the writing faults, the first part of the episode, I felt like I didn't actually feel like the dialogue of the first scene was that wrong. It's just the delivery was a little off, and I liked the background music. It was a bit overdone with the Rainbow Dash guitaring. Yes, that's true, as Shuckle pointed out. But other than that, I like that part.
I think if you look at it like that,
the music was fantastic.
The
music actually was.
Yeah, the music wasn't bad. I mean, that I wouldn't put down in any way. Especially, it was probably really difficult to do to create something that would be industry standards without being as fantastic. It's obviously not going to be Daniel Ingram, but
I think it was better. Honestly, I think this was much better. This felt. I'm someone who really doesn't like Daniel Ingram stuff, like a lot. I really don't like the music in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. I think this was a major step because the music flowed more with. There was no actual like song interludes. There was no, really.
Yeah,
there was no musical. That's what I love about it. They didn't have a song.
In the background.
Yay!
But is it a step up from the stuff that Wayne Anderson puts in the show, the background music? I think it's as close to the claim of the standard of Friendship is Magic. I think the background music.
I think
it's as close as it gets.
It was believably canon. I want to use that terminology.
Yeah,
because it was believable enough that's the type of music that you could put in a kid show like that, and it would fit. It was subtle enough, and it wasn't. It wasn't terrible.
What one of my favorite scenes in the show itself was when Twilight was going into that area and she sees like the trail of the rainbow fire from where Rainbow crashed.
Oh,
and she's walking into it, and you hear that little Back to the Future melody play.
I didn't catch that.
Oh,
I figured that was a reference, but I didn't catch
love
that.
that.
See, but that's a subtle thing. That's a subtle reference I can deal with. The billboard things, that was out of hand, but that subtle reference I could have dealt with. And also, I don't know how many people actually noticed it, but there was one scene when the town was being destroyed, one of the roofs lifted up, and there was a shot of Octavia sitting in one building. The other building was actually the director's OC, sitting in a bathtub, in a really sharply done art picture. There's any advertisement that I absolutely did not like, it was that one.
That's not really an advertisement.
You can't blame it for that one. I mean,
kind of like
even the actual
Andy
show did
Hitchcock
that. In the jeez, what's the name of it? The episode, the one where we meet Shining, the wedding one, the wedding. When she was walking around with Cadence. Yes.
Are you talking about Sipsy's OC?
Brain fart. Yeah, Sipsy's OC was in there.
And there are a million reasons why that is a bad thing, but we won't go into that because that's like half an hour of discussion, I think. But I think for fan episodes, they can put in whatever they want. And we're going to make fun of them for doing it when they do it.
I think I'm one of those people who thinks that in fan-made content, OCs pretty much ruin everything. But in here, I didn't think it wasn't like Dusk's Dawn, where it was just like absolutely Dusk's Dawn was OCs and was one of the biggest abominations the fandom has ever made. But we're not talking about that.
What?
Dusk's Dawn. Dusk's Dawn is the first fan-made episode, actually. This is Double Rainboom is actually the second fan-made episode. You guys have never seen Dusk's Dawn.
Well, I
would dispute that. It is.
I haven't
quotation
seen
mark,
it.
quotation mark, first fan-made, quotation mark.
It was a piece of
chicken.
But it is not.
Quite honestly, it was a piece of
Chicken.
In your opinion.
It is not the first thing that the fandom has tried to put out that was animated, voice-acted, music, and everything like that. That's they tried to make industry standards. Have you ever seen those? There was a little miniseries that followed Doctor Who's and Derpy. And that one was actually almost canon. Like, the animation was fantastic.
I love that one. Was that on
the
Bob
writing
Dumbo-Rat's
was
channel?
great. I've seen a few of them, and the voice acting was phenomenal. Like, it did exactly what it needed to do. That one was good, but it did not get the publicity that this one did. And I wish it had, because if there was anything that the whole that a lot of people were going to get if we were going to get a huge spotlight on, it should have been something like that, or at least something that Jan Animations did. And while I have a few opinions about him, he does put out
like
damn good
animations. It's not like Bigfoot's going to look at this and say, no, they can't do anything at all. Ah.
Well, I think you should sort of avoid putting the stamp of this is representing the fandom and everything that it can do onto everything that someone who happens to be in the fandom creates.
Personally, I think all the bitching is a worse stamp than any actual content made. Really, I just cannot stand the constant stream of hate on top of things. Yeah. I can understand criticisms and opinions.
I can understand criticism.
I can understand that completely. Just don't make it sound like you're the ultimate authority and, just rip into anything that you do not like.
And there's a lot of fans that are like that. Hint, hint, 4chan. But yeah, they hate everything without an actual basis behind that. If you want to have an opinion behind it, but when I watched the episode, I didn't have a good opinion on it at that particular moment. That's for sure. I didn't like it at all, and I kept complaining about it. And afterwards, I just looked at it, and it's not really worth it to always have that kind of a negative approach to everything, because then you yourself are going to be kind of negative. And I think
I'm taught to take a negative approach to everything. I'm taught to critique the hell out of everything so that it turns out better in the long run.
But in the end,
you're doing that with a good purpose, and you're not trying to be insulting about it.
In the end, I kind of looked at it.
You're trying to be good about it.
In the end, I looked at it. There was all these things I didn't like, but when you look at the whole thing as a whole, it wasn't terrible. It was good, and it did what it wanted to do. It was exactly like it was a fan-made episode. It was a full episode's length, actually longer, but that's kind of forgivable because it was still in the half an hour time frame without advertisements.
With a critical eye, the only good thing I actually can say about it, I mean, I did like a couple of the jokes, which were nice, but that goes in my opinion, into a fan episode or into a fan video rather than an episode. But like looking at it from a critical eye as the episode, the only good thing I can say about it is the same thing I say about every terrible fiction that hits the feature box. Is I really don't think this was done well, but in all honesty, it did do exactly what it was supposed to do, and that is entertain its audience.
Yeah. And one of the things I think,
and
give them a good time.
You definitely tell they were having a great time with this.
I can appreciate the fact that when they were making this, they were still keeping in mind that the original audience behind the original show was still for little girls, and that's still something that the show is about. And the fan-made episode wasn't a super mature thing because they still kept that in mind. They still had that same element of immaturity, but still maturity. The only thing I didn't like was when it got to the Powerpuff scene and that monster thing started running away, and then they aggressively beat the ever-living crap out of it.
That
was a little...
That bothered me because that was a little dark.
Yeah!
It was a bit dark.
I was like, what is this?
Like, why would you do that? Well, what?
That was like the Doctor.
You made the Powerpuff Girls look like assholes. Congratulations.
That was like straight out of Doctor Who. That was like straight out of Doctor Who when he talked the aliens into going away, and then Torchwood blew them up while they were going away.
Yeah, it did kind of have that, but it also showed like a disconnected communication, so that it would set up the Rainbow Dash being incredibly freaked out by them and trying to stay away from them. I think that's kind of what they were going for there.
I think she would have been freaked out by them simply because they wanted to make them their little pony. To be honest, you know what I wanted to happen? I wanted that section where she goes into the Powerpuff Girl thing to be the middle of the episode. Because
not the bulk of it.
It would have been better that way.
You could have gone
pacing.
So you could have done so much with that. There could have been a whole section of the interdynamic between the Powerpuff Girls and Rainbow Dash. You could have done an entire section, and then maybe a final section of some sort of like final boss thing. Because like, what was the evil? Like the evil face in the middle of the thing that was never explained.
That's actually where a lot of crossovers fall short. I see this in fan fiction all the time. Someone brings in this great idea for crossover, and they spend... One of two things happen. They either spend way too much time getting to the point where it actually crosses over, and they have no room left to entertain the reader, and they have to make this really long story, which they're terrible at doing. Or they get to it far too quickly, and then they just rush through all these details that they wanted to happen, and the thing feels rushed, and the pacing is too quick. It's very difficult to balance the pacing of a crossover.
I think the whole thing as a whole...
setting up tension and then resolving it immediately, that leaves tension. You have
they
to
shouldn't use 10 minutes to get there. They
have
needed
to sort
the
of
10 minutes middle for it.
Create opportunities for the tension to resolve and then not resolve it, thereby increasing the tension, so that ultimately when it does resolve, it feels more satisfying. Yeah,
and the one resolve they did was Pinkie Pie coming in and saying, "Well, nope, I'm saving the day." That wasn't a resolve at all. That was just sort of a cop-out.
Twilight made the potion again. Somehow.
It didn't feel that serious of an episode, so I accept the cop-out. If it was trying to go for like a much more serious and darker tone, then that would just kind of take it out for me. I would agree. But
I think
this is Pinkie Pie being Pinkie Pie, and it was referring back to an earlier plot device, Chekhov's gun type thing.
And what was the Twilight breaking the fourth wall? You all saw that, right? Rainbow Dash is thinking about something, and Twilight just bursts through it and says something.
It was in Rainbow Dash's head.
Yeah,
it wasn't Twilight going right out and breaking it. It was in Rainbow Dash's head. So
it was at the very least a subtle break.
It was what she was imagining. I think it was fun.
Yeah, that's how I see it too.
I think one of the things that I kind of noticed though is it felt like it wasn't meant like the way they set up into the crossover. It felt like one of those things where it should have spanned into a couple different crossovers and not just one, because there was that jump. Yeah. The jump to there, it felt like there could have been just a whole bunch more content.
Yeah, maybe just like short little stops along the way, and then get to the point. They could have done that.
They could have made.
I wanted to see a lot more interaction and development between those characters instead of just here we are, let's chase each other.
They could have made 3 or 4 crossovers instead of 1 if they had fixed their pacing, and that way when you got to the
they could have easily spliced in Boston. Oh my goodness!
It would feel like it was more fulfilling of an episode. Like they had more content into that 120 half an hour time slot.
I think
They went over 22 minutes too.
They went 29. They went 29.
I know.
I don't
They
think that's
had
a problem.
a lot more
I
time.
don't-
Oh no, 7 more minutes.
And I think
A lot can happen in 7 minutes. Watch any episode of MLP.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying.
A lot can happen in 7
7
minutes.
minutes
That's one of the
doesn't
biggest
really
things that
throw me
I think
off.
industry standard has over what this thing did is the fact that when you have correct pacing, you can have a lot of content in 21 minutes. If you look at any episode of MLP, if you look at if you've ever seen any episode of The Simpsons, they can put a lot of content into half an hour. So
Yeah, that's what this episode.
They spent way too much time in the opening, not only the opening theme, but the opening part in general in Twilight's basement. They spent
yeah.
way too much time in that.
Yeah, well,
It's
yeah.
still-
if
it's
you
still-
if you count the content, the content has maybe the half of an MLP episode, which is why it feels so well, they barely did anything. But when you analyze it, this was 12 minutes.
it was still
But barely
better.
think-
It still had better pacing than what the finale did. So I think it sometimes even industry
Oh,
standard
yeah,
falls
but
out
they
on
were
that.
forced to do that.
Yeah,
it wasn't
and
a
you could
choice
tell.
they
You
had.
could tell.
You know, I'm going to be honest. I have actually never watched the full finale of season 3. I
like
saw
this-
there were so many songs I couldn't finish it. I'm just
Well, it's supposed to be a musical episode.
I could not
Kinda-
finish it.
I like the
They
songs.
did
but
that
the
to make
pacing
it feel
was-
fuller since it was so short.
I like
Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
the
it was
songs,
lame.
but the pacing and the content was just bad. And all of a sudden, oh bam,
Well,
you're suddenly a
It
unicorn.
was
and-
12,
unicorn. It was-
12 minutes of musical and here's a product commercial, and that's it.
I
But-
prefer to look at it in context with the rest of the series. That makes it a hell of a lot more better than just a standalone episode.
Or it makes
Look
it
at it in
worse.
context within the entire rest
yeah,
of the
it
series, and it kind of justifies all that happens. At least,
Well, I like to look at it from both perspectives at once, almost. Like, it tied in a lot. It tied up a lot of not just season 3, but pretty much the entire arc. It went all the way back to the beginning, and it explained a few things which I really wish Twilight didn't turn into an alicorn, but that's just my personal opinion. For the show, they actually did a great job with what they wanted to do. But then, as an individual episode, the pacing was just way off for the story.
I think
And so
yeah.
it's
And
those
I
two
agree.
things clash, and that's
Pacing
why it
was
had
off.
such an interesting,
in
such a
terms
controversial.
of the story, it wasn't bad that they all of a sudden made her the super princess thing. I didn't like it that much, but it wasn't terrible. But it was just what killed it for so many people was just their build up to that. And, the words on the tip of my tongue, and I can't think of it.
Well,
the
we're
way
not here to discuss-
they brought up to it, it didn't. Yeah, okay, let's get out of that conversation.
It's not
I'm trying
alicorn
to
discussion time. Although
I think we're getting a bit off topic.
Although I do want to add that it feels more like they might it would have functioned better as like the last episode ever. Period.
Yeah.
Then it would have been
like
okay.
Yeah,
like
Maybe
I
without
said,
the
it
first
was
half, if
kind
they
of
had-
forced on them. They didn't have much choice in that.
If they
It
had
was
built up
Hasbro's
to it
not
more,
studio.
if they had built up to it more, had maybe little tiny subtle indications throughout the entire season, but no, it was all of a sudden one episode, bam, this is what we were planning all along. You never knew.
So
I
speaking
have
of
a
last
feeling that hands were
episode,
tied.
I, for
on
one,
that
welcome our new
I think
Alicorn
just
princess.
backstabbed them.
I
But,
can't
yeah,
wait
that's
to
one
see what
thing.
she
I
does
think
later.
Hasbro had their hands tied. Rather,
Not
Hasbro
the-
tied their hands.
Yeah, yeah.
their hooves are tight. But speaking of last episode, so what are you guys' final thoughts about the double Rainboom?
I actually did want to bring up one point before we do that about the animation itself. Well, I did think the animation was really good. I felt like it was over-expressive at times. Like there was
Yes!
just so many. It was just like
Oh my
there's
gosh!
so many moving
Twilight
parts.
glaring at Rainbow Dash.
Twilight, yeah. There's this one scene where Twilight is thinking, seeing Rainbow Dash like about the Rainbow.
I was waiting for her to stride across the room and kick him in the face or something.
Well,
She had a look of like loathing.
I
No,
think
yeah, it's just like they did way too many different expressions. It was just like there was so many moving parts.
I think it's
that they
all right.
tried too
Yeah,
hard.
I noticed that too, but I actually didn't mind that one. That aspect, I found it was a little more like they were taking their own style of it, and some of the scenes, like there was the scene with Scootaloo, and this is probably the cheapest scene of the whole thing, was she's scootering through town, and you can just see the background moving, and it's just her standing, like it was just horrible. And then she ended up flying in the air, and she did this little twirl thing, and then thought she was flying and hit the billboard. When she did the twirl thing, that animation was so much more complex than anything that really happens very often. the actual canon show. And that in that aspect, I think it was good.
That's the problem.
I liked it.
That's the problem. It felt too complex.
Well, you know what the problem is?
It was inconsistent with the animation around
That's exactly what I was trying to say the entire time, but you guys kept talking.
Sorry.
Now, Bleeding Rainbow said it. Oh, no. Yes, it's inconsistent. That's what it is. But that's only really if you want to be really critical about it. But yeah, at one point it's really simple, and then suddenly it's super complex, and then it's simple again, and it sort of makes it a bit jarring to see.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I'm going to go to final verdicts on that. I think comparing it to what they promised it would be industry standard, you have to look at things like the inconsistencies, the director's choice of voice actors and stuff like that, and all these other things that they could have done better on, but they didn't. As an industry standard, it wasn't up to what it should have been. But as a fan-made content, like a lot of people, well, you really need to look at this thing because yes, they promised one thing, but that's not what they delivered. You need to look at it with the fan content aspect, like Amanisa says. And if you look at it like that, it's actually quite enjoyable to look at. I would give it, personally, a 6 out of 10. Only with the side note that I think that it could be, in my personal opinion, potentially harmful on the outlook that our fandom will get from here on, and just how serious our content will be taken.
Okay. May I put a little final note in here for me?
Yeah, for sure. Everybody can have their...
Yeah. All right. I was glad that it didn't feel like a regular episode. I really would have, I really prefer when they do their own kind of personal styles and whatnot. So all the kind of nitpicks that were said, if it really was at industry standard, if it was like the same as a regular episode, I would have thought that was, pretty cool. Really, I kind of take the personal quirks and, signs of trying to do their own thing as a greater step towards making their own name as opposed to just being a copycat type.
Yeah, I actually want
to like that.
Comment on that. In a way, I think I see where you're coming from. In a way, it's kind of like it's the almost I want to say new at it a little bit. So it's a very, very immature end result that they got. But almost something like this, they had worked more towards. It could have, like, they could do something that was better quality. But my only complaint is because this was it was immature in a sense. Again, that's we could have the whole as a fandom could have put out something that was fully developed.
On the animation front, before I give my final thoughts, do you know the really simplified animation they did during the cutscenes and that one cutscene and during the credits?
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked it a lot the entire episode had been in that kind of form. If they wanted to do something their own way, I think the entire animation should have been different.
I think watching that for 20 minutes
of entirely.
Well,
the puppet thing for 20
you can
minutes.
make an episode and you could do that. That's not what they did, but that's what you could do.
I think watching puppets for 20 minutes would be a little jarring and boring on the eyes.
Really?
Depends on what they did.
I thought Fantastic Mr. Fox was a worthwhile animation, and it went on for 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Well, not those type of puppets. The puppets that were those 2D flat felt puppet things.
I don't like that. It
those.
It did
anyway.
But it was only like a side thing. You couldn't use that as a full content because
it
you just
would
can't
have
have
been
the
something
effects.
different. It would have been something different, which might have been good or bad, depending on how well they did it.
Approach, exactly. Anyways, back to final thoughts.
Anyway, my final thoughts.
Okay.
Wait, did Animus already go? Animus already went, right?
Are you? Did you have anything else to add?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe later. Let him do his thing while I think about it.
Yeah.
I think, like I said before, I really like the music. I think the animation was great. I just felt like the story itself felt too much like a bad fan work to make me take it seriously. I couldn't take the episode as seriously as they wanted me to take it. So I'd give it about 6 out of 10. Like what Sarf said.
So can you repeat that? That wasn't clear.
Yeah, it was a little garbled.
I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Like
6.
What Sarf said.
Okay, yeah, that's.
Okay.
I think that's being fair.
I was like, I am sort of agreeing with Sarf on a lot of points here. I mean, slight variations, but for the most part, for me, it's like the same thing. For what they promised, OP did not deliver. I mean, to use the phrase, but like for what it was, for what it ended up being, not what they promised it would be, for what it ended up being, I'd give it a solid 6 or a 7 out of 10. I think it was done well enough. I know I can't do animation that well. The music was okay. The voice actors were decent enough. Like as a fan content, what it ended up being, and I can almost enjoy it like that. And I haven't actually gotten a chance to go back and watch it a second time yet. But rather, I've been too lazy. But for what they promised, I don't think they managed to deliver what they promised at all. And so that's where I'm being so critical. And I was expecting to be able to take it seriously, and I just couldn't. So that's my thoughts on the thing.
So mine is, I don't like fan fiction, and the only reason I watched this because we were going to talk about it. So I already knew going in, like, I wasn't going to like this, which is not really a nice way to go into something, but okay. You know, I tried to keep an open mind. And I was with it until, and forgiving all its shortcomings until it was crossover, and then I just realized, like, oh, this is the sort of angle they're going with. So they don't want me to, quote-unquote, take it serious, and I just sit back and let it finish, and I imagine that many people who are into that will enjoy it, and I think it was a well-made thing, really, good effort. I mean, I'm not sure what sort of standard I'm supposed to judge it by, because really I don't really like to bestow that sort of gravity on it, like, oh, what will people think? Because really, people don't care. People who are into sort of budding animators thing and like enthusiasts of the fandom, they will look at it and they will have opinions. But outside of that, no quote unquote big people really give two chickens about this sort of stuff, and that's okay. People who like it will enjoy it, and I think it's well enough made. So that's basically it. Does Emma Nisus want to say something more?
All right, yeah. One more final thing. Like I said before, I don't give a chicken about the advertisement that was put onto it. I just care about the product itself. And this is a lot of personal bias on me, but I absolutely love over-the-top stuff, and this had a lot of quirk and a lot of outrageous ideas, a lot of cross. The crossover thing was great itself, and in the end, I just can't be mad at it because I see it as a great labor of love, and for what they were doing, it turned out fantastic for me. So I give it a solid 9 out of 10. I do recognize that there's, problems with the pacing, especially at the beginning, and that was really the only thing that I had an issue with. Just that beginning pacing and a little bit of the voice acting was a little off. But that Bubbles was perfect. Bubbles was freaking perfect.
I will agree. Bubbles,
I did like the character, yeah.
Oh my gosh, Bubbles was beautiful.
Okay, I was so surprised.
Before we did,
that was one of the more memorable parts of it.
Yeah, the voice acting was good too. Now, before we delve into more conversation, I'm going to wrap it up here because we are 55 minutes and...
No, don't wrap it up because you can't just end the episode, so don't press stop.
Minutes. Well, we've now concluded what we have to say, so we're now at 56 minutes. I feel like we should end this here.
Okay, end the topic, but don't just end the episode like that. No, we have to talk on.
Why not? It's 56 minutes in. Nobody wants to sit there.
Because you don't end on, let's end it like this, and then the file ends, you silly. Okay. You have to throw out, information. What's going to happen next week, Sarf? Come on.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm trying to build up to this, and now you've distracted me for the last 30 seconds. So now this is going to be 30 seconds straight of me arguing over
at everyone else now, are you?
She's staring us apart!
Oh, no!
Enough, please. That wraps up our discussionary episode on Double Rainboom episode. This has been Pregnant Stallion Radio. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to check us out on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, livestream, etc., etc. And also, extra note to our own, my personal side blog, the Ask Advice and Blog. AskAdviceandBlog.tumblr.com or something like that. I will have links. I'm a little tongue-tied right now. And if you followed our Tumblr, I did make a big wall of text, and I hate to use that terminology, about the actual purpose of that, and kind of a side note on the Crusaders Ask advice and talk. I can't think
Banter.
of what. Thank you. I can't think of anything right now.
Banter.
However, we do still accept advice questions, as we did when we were the advice column, and we are still very much in tune with still wanting to answer those types of questions. We haven't really been getting any, so I really encourage anyone, if you have anything you want to ask, anything at all, don't be discouraged. Don't be
questions that make me think.
Embarrassed, because it's very much anonymous. I'm not going to go out and I'm going to say your name or anything like that.
Unless you want us to.
Yeah, of course, if you want us to, and we do very much care, believe it or not. And it's not something you should never have to feel alone in life. I think we're going to wrap it up there.
So if it's just anything, just write
anything
into...
at all. You know what? Even if you have personal questions...
Anything at all.
Write in... Let me finish.
No.
Write into...
You want to ask us out on a date?
If you think I'm sexy, please tell me how.
Let the man finish.
Write to crusadersadvice@gmail.com.
Exactly.
Thank you for being quiet enough for me to finish.
You can also drop a link...
monkeys.
question on the Tumblr.
I love you, Shade.
You're welcome.
And really, if you find any kind of any type of way of contact at all, if you want to ask us or send a message on Facebook or something like that, I'm not going to turn down any kind of answer at all, because I love answering these things. I love hearing people talk. So I really encourage anyone who feels the need to ask anything to at least give it a chance, if only for us to be able to talk about it for you. Also, an extra little shout out to our associates at cloudsdale.com and bronynet.org, where we have mutual advertising and featureship. So in the next couple of weeks, we will be seeing a lot of sparkly advertising type things that are going on that are still kind of in the works.
Look at all the sparkles.
That concludes our episode. Please be quiet.
Wait.
Shade has something else.
Would you like some semi-non sequitur bonus content to just append to this?
No.
Shall we save that for later?
We'll save it for later.
Okay. You guys are missing out. We're talking ghosts and poop.
Well, we can save that for next week. We'll save that for next week.
This is a spoiler for next week.
Spoiler for next week. We're going to have a big conversation with not only one, but two special guests. One of them, the official quotation mark Vinyl Scratch from YouTube, who does electronic music, and Joe the Loaf, who, weird name, but does acoustic rock type things, great singing voice, and we're going to have them both on, as well as Shuckle. We're going to talk about the validity of electronic music and what exactly the comparison between rock and electronic, because I feel in today's music industry and to a lot of music enthusiasts, there's definitely a huge rift between that, because on either side, not a lot of people really like anything that's to offer. There's not a lot of in between. I know there's some of it, obviously, but there isn't a lot.
And I will read a 30-minute lecture on the validity of Kraftwerk and what they've done with the electronic music community.
Okay, very well. That concludes
I
our
will
episode.
nod my head and smile.
That concludes our episode. Thank you for tuning in to
Bye-bye.
Radio.
Good night, everybody.
See ya. Cheerio.